Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to take a look at the first day's worth of accumulated stats that we have for the new Ixalan standard environment. Still very early. We're going to look at best of one. So I'm not going to do this necessarily as a best decks video just because it's very early. What I'm intending to do with this video is just kind of give people a view in terms of what some of the early stats are looking like, just to maybe hold off on spending wildcards. Early access took place, a streamer event. I participated in it. A bunch of people tried out a bunch of different decks. It was a fairly casual environment. These decks don't necessarily translate the best, but people are excited to try out new things. So I just want to say, like, all these decks here, they're going to have win rates. Most are going to be pretty bad, but kind of giving you an idea of what people are trying. I also have some deck lists that just general updates to existing archetypes, which I think are reasonable to look at. Tomorrow is going to be the MTGO's first data dump for the Standard League, so we'll take a look there. And it's probably by like Friday, I'll have accumulated enough data to hopefully give you a more clear outlook. Within the first few days of the format, regardless, the existing decks usually can kind of still play. With no rotation means a lot of the same kind of pillars. We're still reasonable. We'll likely see some cards being added here and there as people are trying out new things. Myself personally, I've been just trying out like Explorer combos, stuff like that. Not really anything too serious, but playing around with some of the new cards. So I will just paste all the deck lists. I'm not going to timestamp on this one because I don't want people to think these are the best decks. So again, these are not the best decks. These are just decks of what people are trying out and the corresponding results to more so save you wildcards right now. These decks might evolve to some capacity into tiered decks, but at the present moment, they are not doing too well, or in some cases doing reasonable. And we're going to start off the meta, like we're seeing a lot of the same that was there, but this was also September 5th to today, popularity of the day. It's a lot of the same decks that were there. So looking at it itself, there's kind of two variations of the Gruul deck. There's like this Naya version, which is really, let's call it fight rigging, no fight rigging. So there's this version of the deck that's at 53%, and the fight rigging decks usually have a little bit higher curve. You have a Kogla and Yodaro, Trumpeting Carnosaur, which has been really good. Been fun to play and explore with like combos. Itali, Galta, and Gishath. Gishath is the only reason this deck is Naya, but lets you put a bunch of dinos into play and get some value there. So you could turn 3 get any of these into play. And that's thanks to Ixali's Lorekeeper, Mana Dork for dinos. So turn 1, turn 2, Pugnacious Hammerskull, turn 3, Fight Rigging, put the counter on it, pop off, go from there. The rest of the deck, you got like Belligerent Yearling as another beater, Intrepid Paleontologist as another ramp effect, Triumphant Chomp as a burn spell that scales, and then Raptor Bonehorde Dracosaur as kind of a card advantage engine, and then the dinos themselves. So there's that version of the deck. And then there's this one here, 53.7. So pretty much the same percentage. So no fight rigging in this one. The same kind of early ramp package that we see. The Pugnacious Hammerskull. I opened like 150 packs and I still don't have most of the dinos for some reason. This one's on Hulking Raptor, 4 mana, 5/3 ward 2. Beginning of pre-combat, you add 2 green mana. So you're kind of ramping into your big threats. You still have the Bonehorde Dracosaur, you still have the Polani's Hatcher. This version is going to Trumpeting Carnosaur, Koglas, Italis, and a copy of Skull or Nexus. In all honesty, you should probably be playing 4 of these. This card's very good. It's 2 for 1. It's early removal if needed. It's a 7/6 trample for 6, which isn't unreasonable. And it always brings along a friend. Even at the worst case, you just get one of these spells. It still has a lot of utility. Gruul also got access to a creature line. So there's that at 53. We have Sultai Self-Mill at 53.3. So these are like the reasonable ones. So we got in the set Souls of the Lost, 2 mana, kind of similar, checks the amount of permanence in your graveyard. So not creatures, just permanence. So pretty much everything in this deck is a permanent. And when you cast it, you got to either sack a permanent or discard a spell or discard a card from hand. So it gets pretty big. You have the Urborg Lurmagoyf, Gruul Somaphage, all mixed in there. Sticky Finger puts stuff into the graveyard. Prowler, Gnawing Vermin. You have the Stalactite Stalker, 1 mana, 1/1 menace, and then at the beginning of your end step, if you descended, basically a permanent going into your graveyard, you get put a counter on it, and then you can sacrifice it, and it's basically removal equal to its power. You have Akawali, Seething Tower, 3 mana, 3/3. If you have Descend 4, so 4 permanent types, gets +2/2 and Trample. 8 permanents, gets just some more buff. Ever-Flowing Well, draw, discard, so some value there, and then it flips with Descend, and then you can have it, you basically can create copies, which is kind of cool, so you can upgrade these like little dorks into like Somnophages and stuff. The Micro Tyrant, just another kind of cares about stuff going into the graveyard and getting you some value there, and then Tyvark kind of bring back all that stuff. Dimir also got another access. So those were the good. I'm not going to go into too deep, but things people are trying out. So Boros Pia. So this is kind of built around Quintorius as well as Pia, casting things from exile. So you have things like Reckless Impulse, Chandra, and Nahiri's Warcrafting, along with the Discover from Geological Appraiser. There's a cool combo deck in Explorer, kind of Splinter Twin-esque with this that I've been playing. I'll do a video on it, but just kind of a burn deck, not doing that great, 45%. So there's that one there. And then we go Caves. People were hyped about Caves, 39.6%. This was the highest win rate of the Caves deck. A lot of what it's trying to do is, I actually ran into one on the ladder where I was playing Blossoming Tortoise, which seemed pretty good, as well as the 1 mana blood artifact that lets you sacrifice it in like a blood and bring 2 creatures back to get back the Gargantuan Leech. So you kind of get some value there. But the core of this deck is Spelunking. Lets your caves come into play untapped. You gain some life, and then things like Bat Colony gets counters on things. So you get a bunch of utility there. The Gargantuan Leech gets cost reduction for the number of caves. So this becomes a 1 mana 5/5 lifelink. You got some removal mixed into there. Pernicious Maw becomes a creature. A bunch of Discover effects mixed into there. So a bunch of kind of like utility lands all kind of playing into that. Mono black discard, 37%. So this is just kind of mono black with discard. Trying out a couple new cards, the Bloodletter of Aklazot, and then the God itself. It's kind of underwhelmed with this card. The stats aren't great on it, and it's you have to put it into play first. So it's not one of those you attack and then put it in. It's not Spawn of Mayhem at the end of the day. I think if it had a little bit more power, it'd be reasonable, but in a world of Sheoldred, it doesn't do as much. Some corrupts in here. 22 lands is way too little in part for this type of curve, so that's probably why it's at 39%. Trying to play 6 drops with 22 lands is not where you want to be. Grixis midrange, so the ancient one, a version of the combo. This one's more of a Dimir kind of control deck. Terror Tide as a sweeper, with just Obnixis as the only red source. Combos with either Bloodletter or Sheoldred, and then the combo here. Not doing that great, 29% win rate. So these ones here don't have necessarily win rate data yet, but people are trying out. So mono white humans, mono white aggro has been pretty much top of the decks for best of 1 for a while. This one here is trying out the Warden of Inner Sky, 1 mana, 1/2. If it has 3 or more counters on it, it gets Flying and Vigilance, and then you can tap 3 untapped artifacts and or creatures you control. You put a 1/1 counter on the Warden. Scry 1, it can only be activated as a sorcery. So I know a lot of people are trying this out in Convoke in Pioneer because you have a lot of cheap artifacts. You don't have too much in terms of vigilance, but like even with Adeline, you can kind of get this going. It might be more reasonable even to try this out in Pioneer, Explorer, and the Humans deck, because you have a lot of different ways to put counters on your creatures, so this could become a more progressively bigger threat. They're also trying out the Sanguine Evangelist. So this is a 3 mana 2/1 battle cry. So when it attacks, your other attacking creatures get +1/0, and then when it enters the battlefield or dies, you get a 1/1 bat line. So just another way to kind of go wide with the deck. We got Pirates. Pirates Pirates synergy. I haven't played too much Pirates at this point to really make a comment, but you have things that get card advantage with the Staunch Crewmate. You have a bunch of different burn style effects. The Goblin Tomb Raider is a 1-mana 2/2 in most cases with the artifacts. This card's been pretty sweet. Like, it kicked my ass in draft. It enters the battlefield. So it's a 3-mana 2/3 flying ward 1. And you basically lock down one of your opponent's best creatures or artifact. It becomes a treasure until the Kite Sail leaves the battlefield. This is a nice little clean answer to some of the more tricky effects. We have Captain Storm that gives counters when artifacts enter. Breaches is another way to get rid of blockers, get you treasure or card advantage. And then the Belligerent, 4-mana 5/5. You get treasure tokens and card advantage. And then you have the Galleon as kind of a big removal spell on the top. This actually might be something to try out in Gruul Boats. It's actually cheaper to crew than Boat, and it deals 5 damage over 3. So this might be something for Shieldred, because I just was playing Gruul Boats before I recorded this, and I had it, like my opponent had Shieldred, and I just didn't have a way to take it out. It's also easier to crew because a single cat token can crew it in that regard. So that's something I'm actually going to try out, see how it goes. So we have Rakdos kind of ramp. So this one's like a descend kind of combo. So early removal, set of Infernal Grasp, play cut down, or go for the throat. Your life total is a resource, especially in a control deck. Some sweepers. The Brotherhood's End's always kind of cheeky. The big score helps you get ahead. The Curator's an interesting one here. I wouldn't play it because, so basically just this doubles your discover triggers, but your only kind of discover is either hit the mother load where you're already pretty high on the curve for value. Actually, I guess because you're also on the Chimley, it could have some utility. Lets you discover 5 to get some utility, but core of this deck is just kind of ramp up, play big beat like Chandra's, Chimley to Cascade, reach the multiverse, Tali, hit the mother load, all kind of in. I would probably still cut this, play a little bit more interaction. You need to survive to the late game, and just having more early play would be reasonable. Asor Control is another deck that was usually pretty popular or reasonable in best of 1. This version here is playing some copies of Get Lost, just a flexible removal spell. Basically Fateful Absence, but the map tokens I think are worse than clues because they need a creature, as well as this hits enchantments in addition to the planeswalkers itself. This version here, you got some ramp, you're winning with like Jace or Wandering Emperor. So it's not like huge innovation. There's also some Stroke of Midnights, just as more targeted removal. And then this version is also trying out a couple copies of the Restless Anchorage. So just another way to have a creature land in this particular color pairing. And then lastly, Azorius Artifacts. Again, don't know how good this is, but seems kind of cool. Urza reduces the cost. You have things like Thousand Moons, Smithy, basically creature equal. So enters the battlefield, you get a gnome, basically a construct. Power and toughness equals to the number of artifacts and creatures you control. And or creatures. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, tap 5 untapped artifacts or creatures, and then you transform it. And then whenever an artifact or creature, basically whenever you cast an artifact or creature, you get to create another construct, which is kind of cool. Static Net is removal. Grind Spider, Stern Lessons, just ways to ramp, but get you a bunch of Power Stone tokens. The Gnome's nice little early removal. Bunnycorn for Go Wide. Iron Crag, Treasure Maps kind of mixed into their Mightstone, Meekstone combo with the Urzas. And then what's a Call do? 3 mana, 1/5, beginning of each player's end step. If an artifact on the battlefield, look at the top 2, so you anticipate kind of effect, and then some Eternal Wanderers. So interesting kind of deck there. Like I said, this is the first kind of dumping of data, really what I wanted to share. I know a lot of people were hyped, myself included, on things like the Ancient One combo, various Dino decks. I love Pia. I have my Pioneer deck. Quint has also been really sweet. So I don't think this is the best version of the deck anyways. The fact you're not playing all the Reckless Impulse style effects is also a little sketchy. I don't think Chandra is great in best of 1. There's too many easy ways to kill it. But let me know what you think, what you've been playing. Like I said, as soon as we get a conclusive data set, I will also publish that as well. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one. Stay safe out there.